The Galactic Academy of Unified Defense was one of the most respected places in the entire Spiral Arm. Every year, thousands of young warriors, explorers, strategists, and scientists arrived from different planets, all hoping to train among the best. Some came with natural strength, some with advanced technology, and some with unusual gifts. But on this day, something different was happening, something none of them expected. The main training hall was filled with noise. Students talked loudly, some laughed, and others stretched their limbs or polished their armor. The air smelled faintly of metallic oil and the cool scent of artificial air that came from the Academy's climate system. The bright blue lights shining from the ceiling made the room feel wide and endless. Master Vorak, the main instructor, stood on a raised platform at the front of the hall. He was tall, with scaled skin the color of green stone and sharp eyes that never missed a detail. He was known for being strict, but fair. Vorak believed in discipline and respect, and he did not tolerate carelessness. He tapped his metal staff on the floor once. The sound echoed loudly through the hall. "Quiet down," he ordered. His voice was deep, and the students immediately stopped talking. Silence spread across the room as everyone turned their eyes to him. "We have a new cadet joining us today," Vorak announced. "A species rare in this academy." Whispers began immediately. "Which species? Is it from the outer clusters? Maybe one of those beings made of pure energy? No, I heard it's from a small planet. Very small." They all waited, watching the large doors at the back of the hall. The doors slowly slid open with a soft hum. A single figure walked in. She was human. Her footsteps were light but confident. Her name was Lyra Hale, and she looked very different from the other cadets. While many carried glowing weapons or armor with strange shapes, she wore simple training clothes, dark pants, a gray sleeveless vest, and boots that had clearly traveled far. Her hair was tied back, and her expression was calm, almost peaceful. But it wasn't Lyra herself that made the hall fall silent. It was the blade she carried. A long metal sword hung at her side. It was simple, no glowing lines, no strange energy field around it. But the surface of the blade was etched with dozens of tiny ancient symbols. Some looked scratched, some carved, and some were almost burned into the metal. The marks were old, older than anything the cadets had seen before. In this academy, swords were rare. Energy weapons and plasma tools were far more common, but Lyra's blade looked like it carried history. Master Vorak narrowed his sharp eyes. He tapped his staff again. "You there," he said, his voice echoing. "Step forward." Lyra did not hesitate. She walked to the center of the hall and stood with her back straight, her hands at her sides, and her eyes focused respectfully on the instructor. "What is your name?" Vorak asked. "Lyra Hale," she answered clearly. Some students shifted uncomfortably. They had never heard a human speak their language so smoothly. "And your world?" Vorak continued. "Earth," she replied. A wave of murmurs spread through the hall again. "Earth? That primitive place? I thought humans didn't travel much. Doesn't that planet still use old machines?" Vorak raised his hand, and the whispers died instantly. "I see you carry a blade," Vorak said, pointing at the weapon at her hip. "Why?" Lyra looked down at the sword for a moment, then raised her head again. "It is my tradition," she said softly. Vorak stepped closer. His eyes scanned the symbols carved into the blade. "These markings," he said slowly, "they resemble battle records." Lyra stayed silent. Vorak's sharp eyes turned more focused. "Do you know what each symbol means?" "Yes," she said. "I know all of them." A silence fell again, deeper this time. Vorak straightened his posture. "Very well, Cadet Lyra. Since you are new, we will begin with a simple demonstration. You will show the class your skill." The students leaned forward with anticipation. Many expected the human to be slow or inexperienced, or too soft for academy standards. Others were curious because they had never seen a physical blade in use before. Vorak pointed at a training dummy on the far side of the hall. The dummy was tall, made of thick metal plates and reinforced joint mechanisms. It was designed to withstand strong impacts. "You may use your sword," Vorak said. "Strike the target." Lyra nodded politely, then stepped calmly toward the dummy. Her movements were controlled, not rushed, not nervous. She placed one hand on the hilt of her blade. A few students laughed quietly. "Look, she's actually going to use that old thing. It probably can't even cut through the dummy. Maybe she just carries it for decoration." Lyra ignored all of it. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, almost like she was listening to something. Then she opened them again and unsheathed her blade. The room grew quiet. The blade slid out smoothly, shining faintly under the lights. As it fully left the sheath, the etched symbols began to glow with a soft white light. Many students gasped. "That's not normal. Why is it glowing? Is it reacting to something?" Vorak himself raised an eyebrow. Lyra positioned the blade, holding it with steady hands. She took a slow breath. Then she moved. It happened so quickly that some students didn't understand what they had seen. Lyra stepped forward, swung the blade once in a clean arc, and landed lightly on her feet. Her expression never changed. For one long second, nothing happened. Then the training dummy split in half, a perfect cut, clean from top to bottom. A burst of shocked voices filled the hall. "That's impossible! She cut metal like it was nothing! How can a human move like that?" Vorak stared at the dummy, then at Lyra, then at the blade. "That strike," he said slowly, "was not performed by a beginner." Lyra lowered her sword respectfully and held it by her side. "I had good teachers," she said. Vorak's eyes narrowed. "Who trained you?" Lyra hesitated for the first time. Her voice grew softer. "People who protected my world. People who carried this blade before me." Several students exchanged confused looks. The instructor tapped his staff again. The sound echoed strongly. "Cadet Lyra," he said, "your performance demands further evaluation. You will report to the private training chamber tonight." Lyra nodded without fear. "Yes, Master Vorak." The instructor turned to the rest of the class. "As for the rest of you," he said loudly, "let this be a reminder. Never judge strength by appearance, and never underestimate a weapon just because it is old." Lyra returned to her place at the edge of the hall. Students looked at her differently now, some with respect, some with concern, and some with curiosity. But Lyra did not look back at them. Her eyes were fixed on the blade she held gently. She ran her thumb across one of the old etchings. The symbol glowed softly, as if remembering something long ago. In that moment it was clear. This human was not ordinary. This blade was not ordinary. And her story was only beginning. The sun lamps of the Galactic Academy slowly dimmed as evening approached, turning the halls into a calm blue glow. Training sessions ended, students returned to their rooms, and the wide walkways grew quiet. Only a few remained in the practice areas, polishing equipment or reviewing lessons. But even in this peaceful time, whispers about the human girl continued to travel from one group to another. "Did you see how she cut that dummy? Her sword glowed! No human should be that fast." Some students were impressed, some were unsure, and some were simply curious. Lyra Hale heard none of these whispers. She walked through the hall with quiet steps, her blade sheathed at her side, her expression steady. There was a softness in her eyes, but also a depth that made it difficult to guess what she was thinking. She returned to her small assigned room. It was simple. Just a bed, a small table, a glowing panel on the wall for communication, and a place to store personal items. Most cadets decorated their rooms with items from their planets. Bright fabrics, strange crystals, or tiny hover models. Lyra's room, however, remained empty, except for her blade. She placed the sword carefully on the table and sat down in front of it. For a long moment she said nothing. She simply looked at the blade. The etchings no longer glowed. They looked dull again, old and worn. Some scratches were deep, as if the metal had clashed with powerful opponents. Others were faint, like soft memories carved by time. Lyra ran her fingers gently across them. Each mark had meaning. Each mark belonged to a story. A moment lived, a moment survived. A soft knock came at her door. "Cadet Lyra?" a voice asked. Lyra stood and opened it. A young alien student stood there, thin with long limbs and pale orange skin. His name was Nirael, from the floating world of Haldren. He looked nervous, shifting from one foot to the other. "May I ask something?" he said. Lyra nodded politely. "Yes, of course." He glanced at the blade on the table. "Your sword. Where did you get it? I have never seen a weapon like that. Not with those symbols." Lyra looked at the blade for a moment, then back at him. "It was passed down to me." "By your family?" Nirael asked. She shook her head slowly. "Not exactly. It belongs to all my people. It was carried by many before me." Nirael's eyes widened in surprise. "Many? But how?" "It looks so old. Maybe hundreds of cycles old." Lyra smiled faintly. "Older." He opened his mouth to ask more, but stopped himself. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bother you." "You are not bothering me," Lyra said. "But the meaning of the symbols, it is not a short story." Nirael nodded awkwardly and stepped back. "Well, good night, Lyra. I hope your evaluation goes well." Then he hurried away. Lyra closed the door gently and stood alone again. Her gaze returned to the blade. "The meaning of the symbols," she whispered softly. "I suppose someone will need to hear the story someday." She lifted the sword with both hands, holding it horizontally. Just touching it made the air feel heavier, as if the metal carried decades of memories. The first symbol, carved near the hilt, was a small spiral. It represented Earth's first contact, not with a friendly visitor, but with a threat that challenged their survival. Lyra closed her eyes, remembering the old stories, how humans had protected their world not because they were strong, but because they refused to surrender. That is what the spiral meant. Hope, turning in endless circles. The second symbol was a sharp triangle. It marked the great escape of the outer colonies, a moment when humans had to flee from a stronger force, yet refused to abandon each other. Another symbol showed a star broken into two pieces. That etching honored the Battle of the Twin Orbits, where human pilots defended helpless travelers from attackers far beyond their strength. And the fourth symbol, Lyra touched it gently. It resembled a curved line with small points along one side. It was the symbol of the silent defense, a conflict fought not with loud machines or large armies, but with quiet strategy and courage. Each mark was carved by someone who lived their story. Warriors, explorers, protectors. Some were famous, some were unknown, but all of them believed in the same idea, that even a small world like Earth could stand tall. When Lyra opened her eyes, she found herself breathing deeply, almost as if the memories themselves were filling her lungs. A soft bell chimed through the academy walls. It was the reminder. Her private evaluation was soon. She sheathed the blade, locked her room, and walked toward the training chambers. The private chamber was located deep inside the academy, past heavy doors and quiet corridors. It was large, circular, and empty. The walls were smooth and silver. made from strong alloy materials. Floating drones rested along the walls, waiting for activation. The ceiling lights shifted in color depending on the type of test being performed. Master Vorak stood in the center of the room, holding his metal staff. "You arrived on time," he said with a nod. "Yes, Instructor," Lyra replied. Vorak studied her carefully. "I want you to understand something. What happened today in the main hall? Such skill is rare, and rare things must be understood clearly." "I understand," Lyra said, standing straight. Vorak tapped his staff on the ground. The sound echoed. "Your blade," he said. "Tell me about it." Lyra hesitated. She did not like to share too much, but she also knew hiding information here would not help her. "It carries the history of my people," she said slowly. "It is not simply a weapon. It is a memory." Vorak tilted his head slightly. "And yet, you use it as if it responds to you." "It does," Lyra admitted, "but not because of power, because of connection." Vorak tapped his staff again, and the floating drones activated. Small lights blinked as they lifted from their resting places, ready for command. "We will begin with observation," he said. "Draw your blade." Lyra unsheathed the sword. This time, the symbols glowed faintly even before she moved. The instructor's eyes narrowed. "Interesting." He walked around her slowly. "These markings, each one is from a battle, a conflict, a moment of survival." "Yes," Lyra said. "Yet you say you were not there for any of them." "That is correct," she answered. "But the blade remembers." Vorak paused. "Explain." Lyra took a slow breath. "Humans do not always win because of strength or tools. We win because we learn. Every mark on this blade is a lesson. Every person who held it left something behind. Skill, memory, warning, hope." Vorak studied her face carefully. "And now all of that is with you?" "Yes." The instructor stepped back, impressed but also cautious. "Then show me." He raised his staff. In an instant, the floor shifted beneath Lyra's feet. Panels moved apart, revealing uneven surfaces. Hollow screens activated, projecting moving shadows. The gravity field adjusted slightly, making it heavier on one side. The drone swarm lifted higher, positioning themselves around her. They glowed with scanning lights, ready to test her reflexes. Vorak spoke firmly. "This chamber records movement, reaction, and control. Show me what you can do without harming anything." "I want to see your precision." Lyra nodded. Then she moved. Her blade was fast, but not wild. Her strikes were clean, controlled. She spun lightly to avoid drones, tapped their sensors gently with the flat side of her sword, moved in rhythm with the shifting floor, and adapted to every change without hesitation. Vorak watched closely. This was not raw power. This was understanding, movement built from lessons passed across generations. The drones accelerated. Lyra moved faster. Her blade glowed brighter. Vorak felt something he rarely felt, a sense of surprise. When the test ended, the lights dimmed, and the drones returned to their resting places. The room fell silent. Lyra stood calmly, breathing evenly. Her blade dimmed back to normal metal. Vorak slowly approached her. "You fight," he said quietly. "As if you have lived many lives." Lyra sheathed the sword. "I have lived only one life, Instructor, but I carry many stories." Vorak nodded slowly. "Then your presence here will change much." Lyra did not smile, but her eyes softened. "If it helps, then I am glad." Vorak looked once more at the blade, then at the human girl standing confidently in front of him. "There is more to you," he said, "than any record shows." Lyra bowed her head respectfully, and the instructor knew. Her past was powerful, but her future might be even stronger. The Galactic Academy slept under the soft glow of its night lamps. The lights were dim, The hall's quiet and the air still. Most cadets rested, preparing for another day of training. But in the center of the massive complex, one chamber remained active, glowing faintly like a watchful eye. Inside that chamber stood Lyra Hale. She rested her hand on the hilt of her blade as she waited for Instructor Vorak to begin the next phase of evaluation. Her face remained calm, though inside she understood this was more than a simple test. It was a measure of her place in the Academy, and maybe even her place in the galaxy. Vorak stood across from her, his scaled hands gripping his metal staff. His eyes were sharp, focused, thoughtful. "Cadet Lyra," he began, "what you showed earlier was impressive, but here in this chamber, skill alone means nothing if it cannot be controlled." Lyra nodded. "I understand." He raised his staff. "Tonight I will test your limits, not to break you, but to understand you." The chamber lights brightened slightly. The circular room expanded, its smooth walls shifting and reshaping. Hidden mechanisms unlocked with quiet clicks. The floor lowered, then rose in sections, forming platforms at various heights. Vorak tapped his staff on the ground. The hollow sound echoed, like a signal. The trial began. The first drones activated. They floated up from the wall panels, small and silver like round metal insects. Blue lights blinked on their surfaces as they scanned Lyra. They flew in slow, careful circles, studying her stance. Lyra watched them quietly, her posture relaxed but ready. "Do not strike them yet," Vorak said. "This stage tests your awareness." The drones suddenly shot upward, scattering across the room. Their lights flashed in rhythmic pulses. They were not attacking. They were observing. Lyra closed her eyes just for a moment. She listened. The faint hum of their engines, the soft shift of air, the little electronic pulses that came from their sensors. Each sound told her where they were. She opened her eyes and turned her head slightly. A drone swept past her face, but she didn't flinch. Vorak watched carefully. "She trusts her senses," he muttered to himself. "Good." The drones finished scanning, then their lights changed from blue to yellow. Vorak struck the ground with his staff again. "Second stage!" The drones now darted at her, not to harm her, but to test her reaction. They moved fast, circling her like flashing sparks. Lyra did not withdraw her blade. She moved her body instead. A shift of her foot here, a tilt of her shoulder there. She ducked, leaned, twisted, all with smooth, careful control. The drones sped up. The chamber lights dimmed. The gravity shifted. Yet Lyra remained balanced. Her training, her memories, and the lessons passed down through the blade guided every movement. Vorak stroked the side of his jaw, deeply impressed. "This level of adjustment normally requires years," he said quietly. "How does she—" His thought trailed off as he continued observing. The drones flew faster, trying to confuse her. Lyra didn't panic. She breathed evenly, focusing on the pattern of their movements. And in the middle of the chaos, she stepped lightly to the side, just one step, and every drone suddenly missed its path, scattering out of formation. Vorak's eyes widened. "That was intentional," he whispered. "She found their center point." It was a skill only high-ranking tacticians normally knew. Yet Lyra performed it with natural ease. The drones retreated. Their lights shifted from yellow to red. Vorak lifted his staff. "Third stage. This time you may use your blade." Lyra's hand tightened around the hilt. She did not draw yet. The floor shifted again, this time violently. Large sections rose high, forming uneven terrain. Some panels tilted sharply, others dropped a few levels. The entire environment transformed into a complex field. Small vents along the walls opened. Cold wind rushed inside the chamber. Shadows danced across the walls as new lights activated above and below. The air felt heavier, more intense. The drones glowed bright red. They charged. Lyra drew her blade. The symbols on the metal flickered to life instantly, glowing faint white as if waking from sleep. The drones fired small pulses, test shots, safe but challenging. Lyra moved her sword in smooth arcs, deflecting each pulse with precision. She did not overextend her strikes. She did not swing wildly. Everything she did was controlled. Every movement flowed into the next. The blade felt almost alive in her hands. Vorak watched with deep concentration, studying every detail. "This is not random talent," he murmured. "It is heritage." The drones surrounded her, firing in patterns. The chamber floor tilted sharply to the right, testing her balance. The cold wind intensified. Yet Lyra adapted faster than the tests changed. She stepped to higher ground without hesitation. Her blade glimmered under the shifting lights as she blocked incoming pulses. She lowered her body to avoid a drone that swooped down, then tapped it gently with the flat of her blade, just enough to deactivate it without damage. Another drone came from above. Lyra spun lightly, letting her momentum carry her, and struck it on its sensor point. It fell harmlessly to the floor. The drones regrouped and attacked again, faster than before. Lyra didn't slow down. Her blade moved like flowing water. Vorak felt a strange chill, not from fear but from the feeling of witnessing something historic. "This is not the skill of one person," he whispered. "This is the skill of many." The chamber's final test activated. The walls shifted again, forming narrow paths and disappearing platforms. Thick fog began to fill parts of the room, reducing visibility. The drones changed formation and began to coordinate. Their red lights blinked in complex patterns. They accelerated. This time, they moved unpredictably. Some swooped low. Others stayed high. Some tried to distract. Others aimed force pulses at her feet to break her stance. Lyra adjusted instantly. She moved through the fog like she had been trained for weather worse than this. Each time she sensed a drone approaching, she turned just enough to strike its sensor or let it pass harmlessly. Her blade glowed brighter whenever she made contact. The symbols on it pulsed like quiet breaths. Vorak stepped closer, not wanting to miss a single detail. He saw something remarkable. Lyra was not attacking randomly. She predicted movements before they occurred. She knew exactly where each drone would be 1 second later. "How?" he whispered. Lyra tapped her blade against her boot, clearing a bit of fog. "The blade teaches," she said softly, more to herself than to anyone else. "The stories guide me." Then she moved again, faster now. The drones tried one final coordinated strike. 3 from the left, 2 from above, 1 from behind. Lyra shifted her stance, slid her foot 2 inches forward, and spun with perfect balance. Her blade cut through the air in 6 precise arcs. All the drones fell silent at once. The red lights dimmed. They slowly descended to the floor, one by one, deactivated. The fog began to fade. The gravity stabilized. The platforms returned to normal. The trial was over. Lyra stood quietly in the center of the chamber, her blade's glow fading back to dull metal. She breathed softly, controlled, calm. Master Vorak approached her with slow steps. He studied her for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Cadet Lyra, what you just demonstrated is not ordinary skill. It is something rare. Something I cannot fully explain." Lyra sheathed her blade with respect. "I only followed what I learned, Instructor." Vorak's eyes softened slightly. "No, you followed more than lessons. You followed memory." He clasped his hands behind his back. "In all the years I have trained students, I have never seen someone adapt so quickly. You moved as if the chamber itself had taught you long ago." Lyra did not respond with pride. She simply nodded, humble and composed. Vorak continued. "There is a saying among our elders. Some weapons carry history, and some people carry destiny. I believe you carry both." He turned and looked at the chamber's control panel. "Your real test he said quietly, "has not even begun." Lyra tilted her head slightly. "What do you mean?" Vorak faced her again, his eyes serious. "There is something approaching this galaxy, something we hoped would never return. The symbol on your blade, one of the oldest ones. It matches the pattern of this threat." Lyra felt her heartbeat slow. "The curved symbol," she said softly. "I know it." Vorak nodded. "You may be the only one who understands it. And tomorrow, the Academy will need to hear everything you know." Lyra looked down at her blade, her expression steady. She knew the next step would not be simple. And she knew. This was no longer just training. This was a warning. The training hall was still silent when the new session began the next morning. The wide metal floor reflected the soft blue lights above, and the tall walls showed no decoration except the Academy's symbol at the center. Every cadet stood straight, their eyes focused on the door where the instructor usually entered. But today, their attention kept drifting toward one person, the human girl, Lyra Hale. Her presence created curiosity everywhere she went. She moved quietly, as if she wanted no attention. Yet she carried herself with a calm strength that made others step aside without knowing why. Her blade rested at her hip, polished and shining. The strange marks carved along its surface still raised questions among the cadets. They whispered among themselves, unsure what the symbols meant. Zarian, the instructor, entered with his steady pace. He stood tall, his pale blue skin glowing under the lights, and his dark eyes scanned the room. He did not waste time with long greetings. "Cadets," he said, "today you will train in pairs. Coordination and awareness are the focus. No real combat, only movement." Everyone nodded, except one cadet who raised his hand. His name was Talvox, known for being proud and easily upset. "Instructor," he said, "I request to pair with the human." The room turned stiff. Several cadets looked away. A few smiled nervously. Zarian watched Talvox for a long moment. "Why do you request that?" "I want to understand how she moves," Talvox replied. "Everyone saw her yesterday. She did something impossible. I want to see it again." Lyra stood without speaking. She did not look angry or embarrassed. She simply waited. Zarian nodded. "Request approved." The cadets moved to the sides of the hall. Pairs formed, but most eyes stayed on Lyra and Talvox. Zarian gave the signal. "No striking, only step patterns. Follow the rhythm." A soft tone played. It was a steady beat, guiding them through simple movements: forward, back, left, right, turn, slide. All cadets followed. Talvox moved with strong steps. Lyra moved with soft ones. At first, Talvox kept the rhythm easily, but as the steps grew more complex, he had trouble following Lyra's smooth transitions. She shifted weight lightly, her blade swaying at her hip with each movement. Talvox grew frustrated. "You move too quietly," he said. "I'm following the rhythm," Lyra answered gently. He frowned. "You're doing more than that." Zarian walked by them, observing without speaking. He noticed that Lyra did not break form even once. Her body aligned perfectly with the beat, almost as if she had trained with this style for years. "Let the rhythm guide you," Lyra said softly. Talvox tried again. This time he copied her footwork instead of forcing his own. Slowly, his movements aligned with hers. The room became calmer. The beat continued, steady and patient. But Talvox's pride did not rest. After the rhythm ended, he stepped back and pointed at Lyra's blade. "Instructor, I request permission for a demonstration." Zarian raised an eyebrow. "What kind of demonstration?" "A blade movement display," Talvox replied. "No contact, only form." Zarian looked at Lyra. "Do you accept?" Lyra nodded once. "Yes." The other cadets gathered around them. No one wanted to miss it. Talvox drew his training blade shaped like a smooth silver arc. Lyra placed her hand on her own blade but did not draw it yet. Zarian stepped aside. "Begin when ready." Talvox moved first. He swung his blade in a clean arc, then performed a series of sharp sweeps. His form was strong and practiced. He finished with a small flourish, breathing heavily but satisfied. Several cadets clapped quietly. Lyra stepped forward. She did not rush. She drew her blade slowly, and the hall grew silent. Everyone could now see the engravings clearly, the strange symbols glowing faintly under the lights. The blade seemed old, yet alive. She held it in front of her, breathing steady. Then she moved. Her first motion was simple, a small sweep. But the sweep flowed into a turn, and the turn into a gentle arc of the blade. The other cadets watched closely. Her movements were soft but controlled. She did not swing with strength. She guided the blade like a dance. The engraved symbols caught the light as she turned. The glow brightened slightly, though she did nothing to activate it. She continued, each movement connecting to the next like a quiet river. Even Zarian took a small step forward. He sensed something familiar in the blade's flow, yet he could not understand it. Lyra ended her form with a careful slide of her blade back into its sheath. She stepped back with calm eyes. Talvox stared at her, shocked. "What was that?" "A pattern my mentor taught me," Lyra said. "It helps with balance." Talvox shook his head. "That was not balance training. That was something else." The murmurs around the hall grew louder. Zarian lifted his hand. "Quiet." Everyone stopped speaking. He approached Lyra slowly. "Your blade," he said. "It reacts to you." Lyra lowered her eyes. She did not want to talk about it. "It does that sometimes?" "What are the symbols?" Zarian asked gently. Lyra hesitated. "I can explain, but not here. And not in front of everyone." Zarian respected her answer. "Very well. We will speak later." But Talvox could not stay quiet. "Instructor," he said loudly, "this is not normal. That blade holds marks from wars across the galaxy. I recognize some of them. Those marks belong on weapons used only by elite fighters." The hall fell silent again. For the first time, Lyra looked uneasy. Not scared, just unsure how much she should reveal. "These are only stories," she said softly. "Stories carved long before I was born." "But why are they on your blade?" Talvox pressed. Lyra placed her hand gently on the hilt. "Because the blade was given to me, and because I promised to keep its stories alive." Zarian nodded thoughtfully. "Every blade has a history. Some holders do not choose the blade. The blade chooses them." Lyra looked up in surprise. She had heard similar words from her mentor years ago. Talvox crossed his arms. "Then who gave it to you? A human did not carve those symbols." Lyra inhaled slowly. Her voice remained steady. "My mentor found the blade on a quiet moon near the edge of mapped space. He told me it belonged to someone long gone, someone who fought in many battles but wished for peace before the end." The hall listened closely. Lyra continued, "He gave it to me because he believed I would protect others instead of harming them." Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Talvox lowered his gaze, uncertain. Zarian placed a hand on Talvox's shoulder. "Every warrior has a path. Lyra's path is different, but that does not make it dangerous." He turned to the class. "Training is over for today." As the cadets left, many glanced at Lyra with new thoughts in their minds. Not fear, not suspicion, but curiosity and respect. When the hall was almost empty, Zarian approached her quietly. "Lyra," he said, "join me in my study today. There is something you should see." Lyra nodded. "I will come." She watched him leave, wondering what he had discovered. She looked down at her blade. The symbols were dim once again, but she felt something she had not felt in a long time. The sense that her past was finally rising from the shadows, and soon she would have to face it. The sun over the academy shone through the tall glass panels as afternoon light filled the quiet hallways. Cadets moved back and forth, whispering about the strange moment earlier in the day, but Lyra walked calmly through the corridors, keeping her steps steady as she headed toward Instructor Zarian's study. She paused outside the door. It was tall, smooth, and made of dark metal that reflected her shape faintly. For a moment, she did not enter. She simply breathed and gathered her thoughts. Then she knocked. "Enter," Zarian's calm voice said from inside. Lyra stepped in. Zarian was seated at his desk, which was covered with data pads and small glowing screens. The room smelled faintly of old books, even though most knowledge in the academy was digital. A few shelves lined the walls, holding artifacts collected from different parts of the galaxy. Some were tools, others were old ceremonial objects. At the center of one shelf was a long, rectangular case made of black stone. Lyra had not seen it before. Zarian gestured for her to sit. "Thank you for coming, Lyra." She sat quietly. "You said there was something you wanted to show me." Zarian nodded slowly. "Before that, I want to say this. You have nothing to fear here. Today's events raised questions, but no one will judge you for what you carry." Lyra looked down at her hands. "I understand." "Good," he said. "Now, let us begin." He rose from his seat and walked to the shelf. Carefully, he lifted the black stone case and brought it to his desk. He opened it, revealing a thin, metallic plate covered with ancient markings. "These symbols," Zarian said, "are similar to the ones on your blade." Lyra leaned closer. Her eyes widened slightly. The shapes, the curves, the small stars etched in the corners, they matched the designs on her weapon almost perfectly. "Where did this come from?" she asked softly. "From our archives," he replied. "This plate is very old, older than most written records we have. It was found centuries ago on a deserted moon, the same moon your mentor visited." Lyra's breath caught. "The same one?" "Yes," Zarian said. "The moon called Velnaris, an ancient battleground where many stories were born." Lyra touched the plate gently. It felt cold, but strangely familiar. "My mentor always said the blade held stories, but he never told me what those stories were." Zarian sat again. "Then perhaps it is time you knew." He pressed a small button on the desk. A hologram rose above them, a swirling blue image showing a figure holding a blade similar to Lyra's. The figure stood tall, their silhouette marked with simple armor. Around them were symbols matching those on her weapon. "This," Zarian said, "is believed to be the last known holder of the blade before your mentor found it. They were not human. Their species vanished long ago, but what mattered was their role." Lyra listened attentively, her eyes fixed on the hologram. "They fought in many great conflicts," Zarian continued, "but they were known not for victory, but for ending battles. Wherever they arrived, war slowed, hostility calmed. They believed in protecting life more than anything else." Lyra nodded slowly. "That sounds like what my mentor taught me." Zarian smiled gently. "Then he trained you well." The hologram shifted to show an old battlefield, a quiet field under a dark sky, with abandoned equipment scattered around. "This was their final stand," Zarian said. "Not a battle, a choice." They laid their blade down after negotiating peace between two great factions. They hoped the galaxy would learn from their path. Lyra touched her blade at her side. She felt a small pulse of warmth. "So the blade belonged to a peacemaker," she said softly. "Yes," Zarian replied. "A protector, not a destroyer." Lyra's voice grew quiet. Then why did the symbols glow when I moved? Why does the blade react to me? Zarian folded his hands. Because the blade is not ordinary. It responds to intent. It recognizes when the holder carries the same purpose as those who came before. Lyra's eyes widened. Purpose? Your heart, he explained. Your will. Your desire to protect others. That is why it glowed, Lyra. Not because of power, but because of your spirit. She looked down, absorbing his words. She did not expect such an explanation. She always thought the blade's glow was a strange accident, but hearing this made something inside her feel lighter. Zarian continued, Many cadets here are strong, many train to fight, but you, Lyra, you train to guide, to defend. Lyra felt her throat tighten slightly. I only want to help. And that, Zarian said, is why the blade responds to you. Silence filled the room, soft and peaceful. After a long moment, Zarian closed the stone case. There is more, he said. The Academy Council requested a demonstration after hearing today's reports. Lyra stiffened. A demonstration? Do not worry, Zarian said calmly. They want to see your movement pattern. Nothing more. No tests, no pressure. Lyra took a slow breath. When? Tonight, Zarian answered. In the central hall. Lyra nodded. I understand. Zarian placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Do not think of it as a trial. Think of it as sharing the blade's story. Your story. Lyra stood. I will try. Night fell over the academy, casting long shadows across the large training hall. The air inside felt cooler than usual, and rows of soft lights lined the ceiling. Cadets gathered quietly, forming a wide circle. The council members stood near the front, watching from raised seats. Zarian stood beside Lyra. Whenever you are ready, he said. Lyra stepped toward the center of the hall. Her heart beat steadily. She felt eyes on her from every side, but she did not let fear hold her thoughts. She placed her hand on her blade and slowly drew it. The symbols glowed faintly again, soft, gentle, warm. A quiet murmur rippled through the crowd. Lyra closed her eyes, and then she moved. Her first step was light, almost silent. The blade angled in a simple arc, catching the light. She let her breath guide her movements, just like her mentor taught. Each step that followed created a flow. Smooth, graceful, purposeful. The hall became still. Even the council members leaned forward, watching closely. Lyra spun lightly, shifting her weight with perfect balance. The blade curved in synchrony, the symbols glowing brighter but never harsh. She felt no pressure, only peace. She moved like she was telling a story, not of battles, but of hope. The air around her seemed to soften. The ground felt steady under her feet. The symbols glowed steady and calm, reflecting her intent. Her final movement ended with a quiet slide of the blade into its sheath. She stood straight, breathing gently. Silence filled the hall for several long seconds. Then, applause. Warm, honest applause. Cadets clapped first, then council members. Even Talvox clapped, though he tried to hide a small smile. Zarian stepped forward, pride in his eyes. Well done, Lyra. Lyra bowed slightly. Thank you. A council elder approached her. His voice was soft but clear. Your form carries peace. We see no danger here, only guidance. Lyra felt relief wash over her. The elder continued. You are welcome in this academy, Lyra Hale, and your blade is welcome as well. More applause followed, lighter this time, but full of warmth. As the hall slowly cleared, Lyra stood with Zarian at the edge of the floor. You have done well, he said. Lyra smiled softly. I'm glad. Zarian looked at the glowing symbols on her blade. This is only the beginning, Lyra. The galaxy is large. Many places still need protectors. Lyra nodded. Then I will be ready. She looked at her blade once more. It was quiet now, but she felt connected to it more than ever. Its legacy was not one of battle, it was one of peace, courage, and hope, and she was ready to carry that legacy forward, into the stars.